Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ames. I'm a musician, producer, and music production teacher. Today I'm going to be showing you how to write a Foo Fighters song. And basically what I mean is I have already I've written, recorded, produced a Foo Fighters copycat kind of song. I basically tried to make it sound like a Foo Fighters track in every single possible way I could. So we're going to kind of break it down, talk about chord progressions, talk about all the sounds, the tones of the drums and all the guitars and everything, lyrical content, kinda, and really everything else that goes into a song. So I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan, which is why I'm doing them as my second video in this series. I did How to Write a Green Day Song back last December, which is almost a year ago at this point, but I'm going to try to get it roll in a little more and do some more artists. But I wanted to do Foo Fighters because I know them very well and I'm a big fan. I've seen them a few times, and this is actually really crazy, but I filmed this whole video like 2 weeks ago, and then when I went to edit it, I had some technical issues. So now 2 weeks later I'm redoing it, but I went on Facebook earlier, which is something I never really do, and Facebook told me that 5 years ago I posted about the time I met the Foo Fighters backstage, and it said 5 years ago on this day, which means 10 years ago to the day that I'm sitting here filming this video is when I met Foo Fighters. So it's just this kind of crazy destiny thing happening. Long story short, how that whole thing happened, one of my cousins was managing a band that was opening for them at the time, and she was like, yeah, we can get you backstage and maybe you'll meet the Foo Fighters. There's kind of no guarantee. And then after the show, we were back there hanging out, and Dave and Taylor and all of them kind of walked by, and we were like, hi, we're big fans. And Dave's just like, everyone talks about him being the nicest guy in rock and roll. And we were like, well, you never know. I mean, he could be having a bad day. He was so fucking nice. He had a big bottle of champagne, and he was going around and he was pouring it for people. I was only 17 at the time, so he didn't pour any champagne for me. But he was just pouring champagne and having a good time and smiling, and we took a picture together. It was so cool. It was just really, really great. So that's my personal meeting the Foo Fighters story. Just adds to all of the reasons I like them so much. You know, I found out that they were all good dudes, and that really just, it adds to the whole thing. So let's get into the song. But before we do, there's one thing I need. Babe, fresh pot? Fresh pot. If you're not a big Foo Fighters fan and if you've never seen that video, that was probably very, very strange. To the song. Okay, so we're going to start breaking down this song, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the tones and the sounds of everything. So the drums, the bass, all the guitars, what do they actually sound like? So for the drums, I'm using Superior Drummer, and I kind of just tried to model it after Taylor's kit. He has a lot of drums. I don't have quite as many things going on here as you can see. So kick, snare, hi-hat, crash cymbals, ride, China cymbal off to the right, and then I basically have two floor toms, one normal-sized rack tom, and then two smaller rack toms, which are kind of these concert toms he always has off to the left side. I think he has like 3 concert toms, 2 rack toms, and 2 floor toms. But I didn't want to do that whole thing. I figured this was enough. And I just kind of went for a mostly realistic, roomy, kind of woody sound. Lots of thump in the drums. When I did the How to Write a Green Day Song, I made the drums sound a little more like they were real drums layered with samples, because I think that's what they do for Trey's drums in Green Day recordings, where I think with Foo Fighters, I think Taylor just gets his drum sound and that's what they use. There's a lot of ambient room tone. So let me just play a sample here. The drums are not dry at all. There's just a lot of ambient room tone, reverb. It's just overall, to me, a very realistic sound. Okay, for Nate Mendel, bass player, basically what I did here is very compressed, lots of gain, drive, lots of mids, and enough low end to make it sound like bass, but not be too overpowering. Nate's kind of always in the background doing these very cool bass fills and these little movement things, but he's not like, hey, look, I'm the bass player, I'm here. he kind of lets Taylor and the three guitar players, because there are three guitar players in Foo Fighters, do their thing. So let's just hear a sample of Nate's bass tone. So like I said, it takes up a lot of space, but it's not overpowering. Lots of mids to make it kind of clear, just enough to stand out to hear what he's playing. For Dave's guitar tone, I have two separate tracks. It's the same tone on both tracks, except the high gain track is just high gain. I just literally took the gain knob in my amp emulator guitar rig, and I just turned it up a little, so when it goes to the chorus and the bridge, the heavier parts, there's just a little more, well, there's more gain. For his tone, I just wanted something that sounded straight, badass punk, just distortion, crunchy. It's pretty clear sounding in relation to Pat's guitar, which we'll get to, which is like fuzz. So let's check out Dave's. He's panned right down the middle, right in the center, because when I was watching their documentary Back and Forth from, I think, like 10 years ago at this point, I've watched it a few times, but I remember him talking about how they mix Foo Fighters songs since there are three guitar players. So he was like, Shiflett's off to the left playing lead, Pat's off to the right playing his very fuzzy, grungy tone, and he's like, and I'm just right in the middle, you know, keeping the rhythm, because obviously Dave was a drummer before anything, which actually I don't think is true. I think he technically started playing guitar first, but obviously he's known for being the drummer in Nirvana before Foo Fighters. Chris Shiflett, lead guitar player, panned off to the left, more high-end, more sustain, still grungy, still rock and roll, but it's a little clearer sounding, and also the way he plays makes this tone work a little more. He does a lot of open chords with the band, but he'll pick like the high three strings, the G, B, and E string. He'll do a lot of arpeggios on the chords and stuff. So he's kind of playing the same stuff, the same kind of chords as the other guitar players, but he just picks them in a different way. So let's just check out his tone here in the chorus. You can hear how it's a little brighter than Dave's, and we can play them together. For Pat Samir, who's like the other rhythm guitar player along with Dave, he's panned off to the right, and in my notes, I wrote Pat guitar, loud, heavy fucking fuzz, lol. And that's really what it is. There's a lot of low end, some of which I had to roll off because there was a lot of feedback, and it's really just like a heavy ass, grungy fuzz tone. Check it out. So if we play all three of these together, you can hear kind of this choir of Foo Fighters rock and roll guitar. It's just like a wall of guitar. It sounds pretty badass to me. Let's add in the drums and bass just to hear a little instrumental snippet. That's kind of what the band sounds like. Let me just preface the vocals conversation by saying I didn't try to sound like Dave. I added a little bit more grit, a little more screaminess, but I don't really sing like that. And I kind of figured there's no way to really emulate Dave Grohl. It's just he just sounds like himself. So I was like, well, I'll kind of like yell, scream it in some parts a little more, but ultimately I'm not going to try to sound like Dave because, like I said, why even try? No one can sound like Dave. So keep that in mind. I'm not trying to do a Dave Grohl impression. I know I don't sound like him, but I was able to, I think, accomplish the sound of his vocals. And the sound really is a really tight double track. If you're confused about double tracking vocals, I have a video about it. I'll put on the screen here. So it's a super tight double. There's basically just delay and reverb on it. I compressed the double track together to glue them together a little bit, and that's kind of it. I also double tracked all the harmonies, panned one a little bit to the left and panned the other one a little bit to the right, but they're the same harmonies, just sung two different times. Are we alone or are we standing in a crowd? So you can hear them kind of being in tune with each other but phasing out a little, causing just a little bit of that cool double tracked vocal weirdness thing. And then if I add in the harmonies, basically what I tried to do is I added harmonies just to accent places, but then I figured in the chorus, I would just sing a lower harmony under everything to kind of fill it out. Kind of like in The Pretender, there's that one high Dave going, what if I say I'm not like the others? And then there's the low Dave going, what if I say I'm not like the others? Right, and they're both singing the whole time, and you're like, which one's the lead vocal technically, and which one's the harmony? And it doesn't really matter because it sounds cool. So I kind of went for that.
Are we alone or are we standing in a crowd?
It's cool, you get this big chorusy vibe, but in the context of the song, it doesn't sound as strange.
Are we alone or are we destined to be found?
So that's like a full snippet of the chorus right there. Lyrically, I listen to the Foo Fighters a lot, and very often I'm like, what the hell is Dave even talking about? I just feel like he kind of has these like existential thoughts, like these big, grand thoughts that he talks about in his lyrics, and he talks about relationships like everyone, but he talks about it in a very Dave way. And it's kind of like, unless I think really deeply about the lyrics and I try to analyze them, I'm like, what the hell is Dave even talking about? I don't really care. It sounds badass. So that's kind of what I went for, and I kind of just looked through their discography and looked at all the song names and the album names and lyrics they've used before, and I was like, let me just throw in a bunch of references. So when you hear the song at the end of the video, you'll be like, oh, he referenced like 8 million Foo Fighters songs, which I thought was kind of fun. Okay, so now let's go through the song, talk about the arrangement and the chord progressions and everything, because the chord progressions and the melodies are really what makes it sound like Foo Fighters. I could arrange the whole track like this with Taylor's drum sound and Nate's bass tone and all the guitar sounds, but then I could write it in a totally different way and it could sound nothing like Foo Fighters, right? So it all comes from the melodies, chord progressions, etc. So let's just go section by section and we'll break it down, try to get through it quickly and get to the song at the end. So I figured for the intro of the song, it would be like the first verse, and also the intro, it would just be Dave chugging on power chords, palm muted, Taylor kind of riding the hi-hat, keeping a beat with the kick drum and the vocals.
Stranded, nowhere left to run.
And then the second half of the verse comes in. Nate comes in on the bass. Shiflett comes in the left channel with his ringing, singing guitar. So it kind of just, it's the same thing as the first half, just a little more expanded.
Hopeless,
Some harmonies.
with nothing left to lose.
So you listen to Dave's guitar and Shiflett's guitar together, and you can kind of hear Shiflett's playing the same thing, like I was saying, but he's ringing out the chords, and he's picking arpeggios on the top end of the guitar. So I'm going to try to fit my guitar into the shot as much as possible, but the chords I used, I'm kind of saying, what chords do they use in their music that just scream Foo Fighters? So the first chord of the song, a lot of the song is based around this chord. It's C sharp minor 7, but it's this variation where you pick it like this with the B and E string open, and it's best known as the best of you chord. And then it goes to this variation of E major 7, like the Everlong chord, and then I move that up to A major 7 with the same form in my left hand. And it lands on B. So that's basically the verse. They do a lot of open chords like that, where instead of just playing C sharp minor, they'll do that open variety. And then you'll hear throughout the song I use, instead of a B power chord, I'll do the B sus2, right, where I'm still holding the B and E strings on the top open. Very Foo Fighters. I do A sus2 instead of A lot. So we'll get there. So and then we get into the first pre-chorus, and the drums do a very Taylor drum fill using those very small high-pitched concert toms. I just love that fill. With the kick going on all four. Pat comes in, ringing out the chords here. Right, so that big fuzz guitar finally comes in the right channel, and you're like, oh, we're doing this. This is a real band now. So now it's much heavier. It's the heaviest part. And the idea for this video came from me thinking of a chorus thing where I was like, okay, they kind of modulate keys and throw in chords where you're like, that's not in the key. That shouldn't be there. So let's break down the chords, and I'll play you some of the chorus, and let's try to make some sense of it. The chorus basically starts on E major, which is the root of the key we're in. And then it goes to the 3 chord, G sharp minor, but but instead of playing it like that as a power chord, we're doing this open form where it's like this. So kind of like all these other chords I've been playing here, we're leaving that B and E string open on top. Then we go to G, the flat 3 chord, which is not in the key. So we're like, are we modulating? And it basically came from me thinking, and I was like, that's a fucking Foo Fighters chorus right there. So we got that G, then we go to D, and I was like, okay, so now we're kind of in the key of D, so we've kind of modulated down a full step from E major to D major. Then I'm like, okay, so where do we go from here? So now if this is 1, so let's go to 6, B minor. We'll go back up to 1, D. Then we'll go to the 5 chord in D, which is A, but we'll make it A sus2 because Foo Fighters sound. And then we'll go back to this G sharp minor add something chord, this open chord. We'll just move everything down a full step to F sharp minor with those 2 open strings on the top. And now we're like, oh, are we back in E? We'll go to A sus2 again, which is the 4 chord of our original key E. And we're back. So that's the whole chorus chord progression. It's very strange. I'm like, that is the most Foo Fighters thing I could have possibly written here. And it all comes from those open chords and the way we're borrowing chords from other keys. So that's kind of the explanation, and I'll play you what the arrangement sounds like. So basically the 3 guitarists are all playing the same things. Shiflett's just picking them with those arpeggios. Right, he's hitting all those upstrokes on the high strings, whereas Pat and Dave are just ripping power chords. Actually, they're not ripping power chords. Excuse me. They're just ripping the chords. They're just... Taylor on the drums is just riding that crash cymbal. Very Taylor-like fill. It's like there's a lot happening in the fill, but it doesn't sound overcomplicated. It's just like a cool, groovy thing that he does in the background. And quickly, I just want to mention the bass part here because Nate does all these octave jumps. So when he hits the low E string, he'll play that low E, and then he'll go to the 7th fret on the A string and play it an octave higher. He does stuff like that all the time. So he's kind of always moving in octaves just to kind of give a little different groovy sound. And then in between chord changes, he does these bass fills that they're not crazy like bass fills. He's like so gently moving from one chord to the next in just such like a nice, unobtrusive, beautiful way. So I tried to capture that. So let's just listen to Dave's guitar with the bass, Nate's bass playing. Right, so he's kind of moving around a lot, and you're like, oh, now he's going all the way up the neck, and he's going to hit that root of the next chord, but like up an entire octave. And he kind of does all these things where you focus on his bass playing and their music, and you're like, he's doing so much, and you don't even realize until you like hone in on his bass sound. He's just such a great bass player that does not get enough attention, in my opinion, for basically holding down the fort with Taylor in the Foo Fighters. Okay, so the rest of this song is a 3rd verse, another chorus, a bridge, and then an ending chorus. So I just kind of want to go through the important parts that highlight the Foo Fighters sound. So we come out of the chorus with this groove on E major, which to me is very In Your Honor sounding. So now we're into the 3rd verse, and basically the drums and bass are grooving together. It's all about the accents here, right? Taylor's playing do ba do do ba do 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 ba do do ba. Nate's playing boom 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 boom. Totally in lock and step with each other, which is something they do a lot. And then the 3 guitar players, they're all playing the same chords, but they're all hitting different accents, and sometimes at the end of the phrases are lining up together. So just check it out. These are the 3 solo guitars. This is something those 3 guys do so often nowadays. Is they'll be like, okay, you take this accent, and then we'll hit together on this accent, and it just kind of works around the drum and bass groove. So check it out with the drum and bass groove, and you'll hear how it all kind of glues. all comes together in the next pre-chorus, which is basically the same, just a little bit more accents on the snare drum to kind of build it. Pat's playing, chugging power chords, and Shiflett is picking the chords higher up on the neck.
On the run and every turn is fuel to
And then we get a sweet Taylor drum fill into the chorus. So I love, it was so much fun to craft Taylor's drum sound and to craft the style all these guys play, because it's so specific, and when you put them together, you're like, holy shit, that's why the Foo Fighters sound like the Foo Fighters. Okay, so let's skip the chorus because it's basically the same, and we'll get to the bridge. For the bridge, I was like, what's a quintessential Foo Fighters bridge? And I came up with Best of You. So I'm like, okay, Taylor's gonna change his groove. Do ba do ba ba do ba do ba ba. Same chords I've been using in a different order, and then we're gonna have a bunch of woes. And I said, okay, behind the woes, and in the second half of the bridge here, where there are no vocals, as you can see, I'm like, we're just going to do a groove, a loud, heavy rock groove, and they're all going to hit these accents together, right? So they do this thing where they're all jamming on chords, and then they'll hit these specific accents with each other, and you'll be like, holy shit, that's so heavy, that's so rock and roll, and it's so groovy. So check it out. They're all hitting those notes together, those accents together, and it's real cool when they do that. And then, of course, we have the Taylor Hawkins / Dave Grohl / John Bonham triplet snare tom kick fill. As my drummer, and that's how it comes out of my drummer mouth. That's just something that John Bonham used to do. And then Dave did, and Taylor does it, and they all do it because they all love John Bonham, and when I play drums, I do it because I love all of them, so I just figured I'd have to throw that in here. Then we're into the last pre-chorus, which is just kind of quiet. Taylor's keeping time, doing those cross sticks. It's a little softer to build back up into the last chorus. And then it goes into the final chorus, which is the same, but it's going to end with like a little outro thing, right? So I do that jam on E major.
following the sound.
But I didn't want to just end it there. So I was like, okay, well, what would they do? I was like, they would add the same groove, but they would change to A, the 4 chord. So they would just kind of go up to a different chord and do the same kind of groove on that, and then they would land back on E major. So E, then to A. So they all hit E at the end in those triplets. And I'm like, okay, we got ourselves a fucking Foo Fighters song here. So I think I touched on everything I wanted to touch on, and basically I'm just going to perform the song for you so you can hear the whole thing and the final mix, because this is still not perfectly exactly how I want it. But without further ado, here is... do I even have a name for this song? Okay, without further ado, here is Following the Sound by not Foo Fighters, by me. Check it out. Okay, I made a huge mistake when I was doing that introduction to the performance part. 2 things. 1, the fake band should be called Foo Fighters, obviously. And I have to do the Christopher Walken, ladies and gentlemen, Foo Fighters. Now we can do it.
Stranded, nowhere left to run. The clock is ticking, the sun is going down. Hopeless, with nothing left to lose. Your star is burnt out, your pretty face is too. On the run and every turn is fuel to throw right on the burn. End of the rope now, time to let it die. could never come alive. The bridge is burning, you sang your lullaby. On the run and every turn is fuel to throw right on the burn. End of the rope, now time to learn to fly. Are we alone or are we standing in a crowd? Are we alone or are we destined to be found? Are we just following the sound? On the run and every turn is fuel to throw right on the burn. End of the road, now time to let it die. Are we alone or are we standing in a crowd? Are we alone or are we destined to be found? Are we just following the sound?
All right, well, that was the song. That was How to Write a Foo Fighters song. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about things I may have missed, things I did, how I did certain things, really anything that comes to mind. Let me know also in the comments if there are any other artists you want me to do this kind of video about, and I'll study the hell out of that artist, and I will try to make a copycat song that sounds close enough, as close as I can get to how that artist really sounds. And feel free to mention artists with female singers, because my wonderful girlfriend Sarah, who I make music with under Cute Threat, you can check out our music everywhere you get your music. That was a nice plug. She's a great singer, and she would happily jump in if I need a female vocalist. So male vocalist, female vocalist, let us know in the comments, and maybe we'll do some of your suggestions. I also teach one-on-one music production, at-home recording, kind of songwriting, really anything you need help with. I teach lessons one-on-one via Zoom, so you can go to my website in the description and hit me up if you're interested in learning more about all these kinds of things, but in a more personal, guided one-on-one setting. It's really fun, and my students seem to really learn a lot every single session. We do an hour at a time, usually every week, and it's just really cool because learning from YouTube is great, but there's something about doing a one-on-one thing where you can just ask very pointed questions and I can give very pointed answers about your questions or in response to your questions, that it's like a whole different ball game doing it one-on-one. So if you're interested, let me know and we can set something up, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.